Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. The Vanguard beta is officially here right now for PlayStation, and of course next weekend for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. And of course, as we're all jumping on and experiencing it for the first time, you're going to be going in and you're going to be changing some settings, right? Because I'm just going to be honest with y'all, the base settings, the default settings in a lot of cases are not ideal. There is a lot of things you want to adjust, a lot of things you want to turn on or turn off. So today we're going over the general best settings for the beta. This will be changing over time, of course, as we get closer to launch. Once the full game launch, I'm sure different things will be tuned and adjusted. So we'll be going over it again in the future. But for now, wanted to go over all the best settings and base settings you want to be using for the Vanguard beta. So as we cover it all, if you enjoyed the video at any point, or if you find it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. Would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new to the channel or if you have not already subscribed, feel free to do so. This is the place to be for everything going on in COD, news, intel, updates, everything like that. So sub and make sure you're always up to date. So we're in the whole Vanguard menu. Now this is on PlayStation 5. Of course, if you're on PC, which I'm sure plenty of you guys are for the new beta next weekend, if you're watching this video then, obviously PC has its own section of dedicated graphics settings. So while we do have a lot of shared settings between controller and some of the graphic stuff, some audio stuff, some interface stuff, so on and so forth, PC does have its own separate stuff, but for that, there's really no such thing as best settings for PC when it comes to graphics. Sure, there's some things that you want to have on high or some things that you want to have on low, but in general, when it comes down to it, my PC is probably different from your PC, it's probably different from Timmy's PC, and it's probably different from Tommy's PC, so there's no such thing as best settings in that case. There's just recommended settings for your specific build. And if that's you and you're looking for the best PC settings, my suggestion would be to go into like NVIDIA GeForce if you have a capable graphics card and looking at what it says is optimized or recommended for your specific rig. But we can look at the general settings that'll encompass all platforms regardless. Starting off on controller, if you're playing on controller, you got plenty of things to adjust. Most players, I think, are on console, especially for the PlayStation closed weekend. So we have plenty of stuff to go through here. Of course, for keyboard and mouse, bindings are sort of personal preference. There's no real such thing as best there either. But for sensitivity, we can go all the way up to 20 for horizontal and vertical. Now personally, as I've said in Modern Warfare, Cold War, Black Ops 4, Warzone, pretty much since the history of my channel, I've always been a medium sense player because you don't want it too high, because while it's nice and convenient for close range, for long range that means your aim is going to be a little bit all over the place because it's just hard to make those minute little tweaks when your sensitivity is too high. On the other side of the spectrum, you don't want a sensitivity that's too low, because then up close, you're just going to get torched because you're not going to be able to follow players fast enough. So I sit on a 10 horizontal, 9 vertical. Vertical obviously is where a lot of your recoil is coming from. So having it slightly lower, I think allows you to be a bit more precise. But 10-9, pretty much smack dab right in the middle, allows for, good sensitivity up close and at a range as well. For the ADS sense multiplier, I'm going for 0.9. This is what I played on when I was playing early during our early creator capture session last week and also during the alpha, and it seemed pretty good. You can actually go through and adjust all your ADS sensitivities for all the optics as well. So if you want 0.9 for everything, go ahead and run it. But I like keeping just the standard 0.9 in general for ADS. Then I leave everything at 1 is what I did back during the our early playtest, and it felt pretty good. So I'm just gonna go ahead and leave it. But this is something you want to tweak if you're not feeling super accurate with, like, say, a 4x scope or a 6x scope, whatever it may be. If you're feeling a little bit shaky here and there, go in and tweak this. They give you a lot of options to do so. Now for button layout, I've always played on tactical. I do use a scuff where I can. Obviously on PlayStation 5 they don't have that yet, but hey, once they do, you already know Code Immortal has got you covered. But if you're on PC or Xbox or right now on PlayStation, I feel like tactical has always been super convenient. I don't play claw, I just play basic. I don't have the paddles, unfortunately, but being able to, crouch with your thumbstick allows drop shotting to be easier, and I just feel like it's more convenient in general. So I go for tactical. Personally, I don't flip my triggers, but you could definitely spam things faster if you're using your bumpers over your triggers, but I don't like to have those on. I don't play inverted. That feels absolutely weird as can be, but some people like it. That's more preference. For aim response curve type, I play on dynamic because that's just what I'm used to between Warzone and Cold War and Modern Warfare. I played on linear for a while because that's a 1-to-1 of what your stick input is doing, but after switching to dynamic, that's just what I'm comfortable with, and it feels good, especially for close range fights on controller. Dynamic just feels the most smooth, so I would recommend that. But really, linear or dynamic, it's not a super big difference. It's just a lot of playing it, getting used to it, and then running with that and not changing off of that. But dynamic is my initial recommended. Vibration, I've never played with on. It just throws off your aim and throws off the feel. And the trigger effect for PlayStation 5, I don't like, again, for that sort of, aiming smoothness. I don't want to have my controller rumbling or being weird in my hands. I'd rather just have it be standard in stock, so I turn both those off. For target aim assist, pretty much everyone on console is going to play with these, or anyone on controller rather is going to play with these. You can have it set a couple of different ways. The default for Vanguard is going to just be like what it's like over in Warzone, so I'm leaving it as that just because I don't want it to feel too different from Warzone, and I switch to something that I'm not super comfortable with. Obviously, I'm playing Warzone almost on the daily, so I'm used to that and I'm familiar with that. No need to change off of that, but if you want to try and cheese out precision or focusing, both of those can be kind of cheesy depending on, you know, just how you engage things. I've seen clips of focusing and precision each having some pretty strong slowdown in some situations. I don't like how it feels though. It feels very unnatural and wonky, so I leave it on default here. You could also go for Legacy, which is a bit closer to Cold War, but I definitely prefer using just the basic Warzone or Vanguard aim assist mode there. For Airborne Mantle, I have that on manual. I have Grounded Mantle on, but automatic Ground Mantle off. There's nothing I hate more than automatically mantling in a fight when I'm trying to aim down sights and like B-hop or jump shot or something like that, and instead I'm throwing myself over a barrier and exposing myself, getting killed because of it. So automatic ground mantle, definitely turn off. I like having this as manual so I can sort of control when I'm going to do it. And then I have grounded mantle on. This is again what I played with during our early playtest, and it felt very good. For automatic sprint, ATS, because tac sprint is back, is pretty much a must-have. It's going to save your thumbsticks, save your thumb itself. It's so much better than having to do it manually. So would highly recommend turning on ATS. It's going to just make your life easier, better for slide canceling, better for just playing and, you know, having that better feel and smoother feel for the game in general. I like to have sprint cancels reload on. I just feel like I have more control in a fight that way. If I need to get out of a sticky situation, I can just go into my sprint, or in this case, walk forward. It's going to cancel my reload, and I feel like that's pretty convenient. I use the standard weapon mount activation. The weapon mount exit I have on. You can also, I believe, change the speed in which you do it, which is kind of weird. You could go for shortest and it'll be like a quicker exit animation, which I guess could be really convenient, but that's something you definitely have to play around with and see what feels the most natural to you, because changing this is going to really change how it feels in game, and it might throw you off if you're first trying out something that you're not super familiar with. So it's long by default. I don't see anything wrong with that, and I played with it on default throughout my previous playtest and it felt fine, but if you wanted to, you could always change that down to shortest, or you could even make it slower if you wanted to. Depleted ammo weapon switch, I don't like that. I just sometimes throws you off. If you run out of ammo, then you automatically switch. You could not be ready for that and it could get you killed, but that's more preference based. Slide behavior, you 110% want to have on tap. This is going to make your slide cancels way smoother, way easier. You did not want that on hold, so make sure you change that to tap. ADS behavior, hold. Everything else is going to be hold here because that's just how it is by default. I like to change my interact and reload behavior to prioritize reload. That way I don't accidentally pick up a weapon when I don't want to, when I'd rather reload, so it just makes things a bit smoother there. Automatic fire behavior, we're holding there. ADS sense multiplier for steady aim, I did drop down to 0.9 to keep it more in line with everything else. Stick layout, I don't like to change, but that's personal preference. Same with all the ADS stick swaps. For the L2 and R2 button dead zones, I would change these to 0 because you don't want your triggers to be not pressing when they should be pressing, so I wouldn't really bump that up ever. I'd turn that all the way down just so you're always shooting when you mean to be shooting, right? Then for, you know, the other dead zones here, that's entirely dependent on your individual controller. Don't copy that from anyone because it's different for literally every single controller out there. Then auto move forward, I have off. The door bash I have as automatic just to make things smoother, and the quick satchel detonation I have on off. So obviously that's all the controller specific stuff. Like I said, for PC, that will apply if you play on controller next weekend. And for keyboard and mouse players, that's really all personal preference with the keybinds and sensitivity there. Now for graphics, yes, PC, like I said, is gonna have a lot more options here, but again, it is very individualized for your specific computer, what graphics card, what RAM, what CPU you're using. So you can't really copy those off a lot of players. There's no such thing as best because it's not a universal thing. But for brightness, I like to have mine turned up a tad bit, but again, that's going to depend on your monitor, what you like to play on. If you want a really bright and sort of washed out screen or a darker screen, really up to you. You can actually go ahead and customize different things if you want in game. If you're partially colorblind, you can change that to different stuff, so that could be nice. And you can change things to whatever color you want to be using, which is pretty cool. Camera movement. This defines the percentage of the camera shake. I would absolutely recommend changing this to least, just because it's going to throw you off less than. When you're running around, you don't want your camera to be shaking all around. It's going to mess with your aim. So if you have that on least at 50%, it's going to be a bit easier to stay on target and keep focus rather than having your camera shake all around when you're trying to move and, you know, spot an enemy at a distance or spot an enemy behind cover. Now, these next three also huge. World motion blur, weapon motion blur, and depth of field are all on by default. Absolutely turn them off immediately. This would be the first thing I do if I were you when you boot up the game. Go in and turn all these off. Sure, they look cinematic and nice, but they are not convenient for competitive gameplay. You want the clearest game possible so you can see things the easiest and the clearest, obviously. You don't want to have these things on, so make sure you go ahead and you turn all three of those off. On-demand texture streaming, you could have it on, you could have it off. That one doesn't really matter too much. Now for audio, I don't think we have like the full experience here in the beta. I think some things are sort of limited and we'll have different options here for the full game. But in general, turn your master volume down to whatever volume you want the game to be. That's more individualized. But for the more specific volume settings, that's where I can suggest different things. Music offers you no vital information. It's cool, and the score for this by Bear is absolutely awesome. I will say that I love the score for the game. Sounds incredible, but unfortunately, it doesn't give me any vital information in game, so music is not super important to me, so I turn that one down quite a bit. Dialogue volume is especially convenient in Warzone because it lets you know when enemies are dropping in or different things like that. In this game, though, for Vanguard, it seems like the vast majority of the dialogue volume is just Butcher screaming things at you. Double kill, triple kill, all sorts of stuff like that, which is not super convenient and can be kind of obnoxious at times. So I would turn that down a little bit, but I would keep it on for some things because obviously you want to know if the enemies have a UAV or dogs or something. You want to be aware of what's going on. So you don't want to have that muted, but because of how much Butcher just yells constantly, I'd probably turn that one down a little bit. Sound effects, though, I leave up because that's things like footsteps, gun audio, things you would actually want to cue in off of to figure out where enemies are going to be. Personally, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a big fan of the Vanguard hit markers. They are kind of weird sounding. For whatever reason, Sledgehammer's hit markers always sound a bit weird, so I go for classic just so it's more, you know, natural and doesn't sound as obnoxious. For the audio mix, obviously I'm using headphones, so I'm having the headphones preset, but I think these will be changing as we get to the full game where we'll have boost high, boost low, home theater advanced, or whatever it is. So these will change, but for now, change that to whatever you're using and it'll be the most convenient. Killstreak music I have on, because why not? Mono audio I have off. Then voice chat stuff, that stuff doesn't really matter all that much. Now for interface, this is actually pretty convenient in a lot of ways. Subtitles you can have on if you want them on, or if you want to be able to read that. I noticed in the alpha for the early playtest that we were playing, they got kind of spammed when streaks and stuff were being called in, so I don't like having them on. But in some cases they could be semi-useful. Text chat and that stuff's not too big of a deal, but this stuff here at the bottom, the telemetry stuff, is actually pretty key. Whether you're on PC or console, if you're on PC, you can see your FPS and your GPU temperature and all that stuff. Pretty important information. If you're on console, though, even, you can turn on your server latency and see just what your ping is like. I like to have that on, especially because, unfortunately, I'm in the Midwest and all of my friends, Espresso, Butters, Lazy, Courier, Ink Slasher, my entire squad, they're all on the East Coast, so I'm always on a high ping and it kind of sucks, but I still like to see that I'm on a, you know, 70, 80, 90, 100 ping when I'm playing, just to be sure it's not me just sucking at the game sometimes, right? So I have that on. You could have the connection meter on if you want. You could have packet loss on, which I think is relatively useful. That way you'll know for sure if it's the server lagging or if it's you lagging, whatever it may be. So that's also pretty useful as well. And then this other stuff is really just, you know, personal preference. Then we get into the HUD elements for minimap shape. You absolutely 110% want to have this on square. It gives you more coverage. Personally, I like to have the minimap rotation on because it makes it easier to do callouts. So I do leave that one on. Crosshair bobbing, I'm gonna actually turn off. This is sort of in line with the screen shake as well. If they're turned off, I feel like it's easier to stay on target. You don't want them moving around constantly, so that's just sort of a focusing and precision aspect of it. So I would recommend turning that off. For compass, that's more personal preference. If you want letters or numbers, then the tooltips, that stuff doesn't matter at all. So yeah, those are the core settings you want to be using or want to be looking for when you first boot up Vanguard, whether you're playing on PlayStation, Xbox, or for the most part PC, with the exception of the individualized graphic stuff. Well, hopefully this helped you guys out. If it did, let me know by dropping a like on the video. Would be seriously appreciated. And if you're new to the channel or if you have not already subscribed, feel free to do so. That way you can always stay up to date with everything going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I will catch you guys later. Peace out.